7 o'clock. Roxanne, do you have 7 o'clock?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Roxanne, would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Davis,
Here.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Here.
Mrs. Engel, Mr. Malone,
Here.
Mr. Marshall, Mrs. McGrattan,
Mary, you're mute.
I'm trying to unmute her.
Oh.
Mrs. McGrattan,
Here.
Mr. Sebelia,
Here.
Mr. Sam,
Here.
Mr. Washington.
Here.
7 here, 2 absent.
Mrs. Ingalls out of town. Mr. Marshall has to work this evening. At this time, I will ask, let's see, he was here. Is he still here? Mr. Allard to give a report, the American Ambulance annual report.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you for being here.
No problem at all. I did submit an electronic version of this, so I think you should all have it visible to you. So if you want, I can just go through a quick brief review of the pages that were presented. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer any. It's kind of hard to believe that we're already in our second presentation of this report already for you. But here goes. The first page is based on the response location. So we broke it down by the section of Ledyard versus Gales Ferry, and then mutual aid, like we did in previous years. 62% of the calls were in the Ledyard section of town, Gales Ferry 38%, and we responded out of town 1% of calls. Our destinations actually introduced a new one this year. We went to Westerly a few times. L&M is the predominant destination of choice, 70%, 28% to Bacchus, and a few patients down to Pequot. The total number of transports we did this year was 734, which is an increase of 13 transports over the year last year. And that's even with all the slow period that we did experience with the initial COVID issues and everything. There still was an increase. I think if COVID did not come around, the number might have gone up a little bit, but who knows? We'll see how that number is next year with the introduction of telehealth and a bunch of other things. We think volume will be impacted a lot by that, by people being able to connect to their doctors virtually versus actually going out, or maybe the number of emergencies will be impacted by that as well. Busiest time of the day, again, early in the morning, 8 to 10 seems to be a thing, 8 to noon. And then again, in the afternoon, it picks up in a couple of different spots. That's not much different than last year. The number of responses we had in one day, we had 12 days where we had 6 responses in one day. We had 6 days where we had 7 responses. And I thought it was impressive this year for us again, where we didn't require any mutual aid to come into town to help us out at all. We were able to manage the emergency volume with our own service only. Busiest days of the week, Tuesday at 16% of the volume. It's all pretty evenly split there, really. 13% seems to be the common number there, but 16% Tuesday seemed to be the busy day for volume. And that seems to be normal for us as well. Within our other venues, Tuesday seems to be a busy day. I don't know what it is, but hospitals do a lot of discharges and stuff on Tuesday. So our busiest day in general is a Tuesday. The busiest month we had for the year was September, with 100 transports in that month of September. With the cancellations versus transports, so we actually responded to 985 requests for service this year. And that's, again, in correlation to the 700 and some odd transports that we actually, 734 transports. So 985 total responses, 24% of which we ended up in a canceled call. So we go out, we respond, and the patient cancels for whatever reason. That's a significant number, but that's not abnormal for the industry. Call types, Sick person, if you remember from last year, it's kind of a generalized term with the dispatch centers, depending on how they do their emergency medical dispatching. They kind of put everything into like a sick person if they can't get a specific answer or details from the person on the other end of 911. So that is kind of the catch-all there. Falls, again, is 102 falls. I think we talked last year about the possibility of working on a falls prevention program. And I think we're going to talk a little bit more with the services in town to see what we can do to do that with the services that can go out and actually get into the patient's homes. And maybe we can do something to do some sort of a fall prevention program with that. The percentage of patient types, it changed a little bit from last year. Last year it was split 50-50, male, female. This year it's female a little bit more than the male. Average age of our patients were 59, which is a 2 years increase over last year being 57. Our response times, right in that 8-minute range. Last year we were just under 8 minutes. This year we're just over by at 8:09. And you can see that 72% or 73% of the time we're responding in under 10 minutes, or we're getting to the residents or the place of the emergency in 73% of the time under 10. Between 10 and 14, it's at 25%. And then there's a few that are 3% that are over 14 minutes in response time. And again, our expectation for our crews is out of a shoot time of 1 minute. And if we have any response times that are out of shoot times that are over 1 minute, we ask the crews to explain to us why it is that it took them longer than a minute to get on. So that's a brief overview of the presentation, and I'd be happy to take any questions if anybody has any.
Does anyone have any questions? Mary?
Mary, yes. Mr. Allard, you said 24% of your calls are aborted. What is it that you get to the house or whatever and they don't need you? Is there something that could be done to prevent that from happening, from you having to go out and then not being utilized?
I would like to say that it would be great if we could do something. I don't know what that is. It's across the board, no matter what area we're in. So that number is similar in Norwich. It's similar in Griswold. Oh. I don't know if it's anything in particular to Ledyard that number is that percentage. It's just kind of, they think they might have needed the ambulance to get out there, and then they decide, no, they don't want to go. It could be a car accident where we respond and there's multiple patients, and they don't want to go because they don't feel as though there's any injury. Obviously, we're doing our part where we're talking to them, explaining to them that, you don't really know what your ailments may or may not be. We're not trying to talk them into going. We're not trying to talk them out of going. We're trying to work with them to get them to, the care that they may need.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Allard, a quick question for you. You talked about the top 10 call types, and you talked about falls and putting together a program. Is there a particular demographics that's going to be targeted in the falls? Is it just a general populace that's having the falls? Is it more of our elderly? Can you?
It's more of an elderly concern. Yeah, it's definitely of an elderly concern. So we, unfortunately, there's legislation in place that doesn't allow us to go out into a person's home without being called by 911. Where the fire department, they can go out and they can do fire prevention type of stuff. You got the VNA in town, obviously, they can go out and they can visit. So if we can work with those folks and share information about issues that we're experiencing with falls, we have some HIPAA stuff that we need to work out there. But if we can get some of that information to them so that they can then go and follow up with those particular patients, there might be something that we could do to prevent some of those falls.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I like your shirt, by the way. I'm a Revs fan myself.
Any other questions? I see Steve Holyfield here. Do you have any comments, Steve?
Actually, I do. I didn't want to steal Mr. Allard's thunder, but just to comment on Mrs. McGrattan's comment about the cancel calls. Do go through every month, and take a look at the calls and compare our stats versus American stats, and they're right on. But to a point on that, Gales Ferry in particular does lift assists. And so that we may get called out for a fall victim or a citizen's assist, in which case the ambulance is assigned to the call and the fire company goes. And oftentimes the firefighters are able to go and deal with the problem and then cancel the ambulance. So it may only be, 6 or 8 times a month, but that does kind of play into the statistics on one reason why they may be canceled and you might not have a completed trip. So that's definitely one component. Also, to a point on the fall prevention, the mayor and I had spoken, as well as Rob Raudio, who's our direct contact with American. He works for Greg. And we've actually mentioned to Karen Getchus that falls were an issue. And I believe Karen and the visiting nurses are currently preparing a program, and I don't know what role the fire department may have in it, but we're certainly in support of it in order to supplement that and to help get out in the community and do, maybe home evaluations. And one of the things that Rob had spoken of was, a resident that is gaining in age may wind up having some issues in terms of that throw rug that they've had down for 20 years. And all of a sudden, as they can't really lift their legs as high and they're kind of shuffling, that becomes an issue, or furniture. So there's going to be a whole community education component that we're looking to unroll. But all in all, just to sum up my side of things, I think American's doing a beautiful job. We've had a couple very small issues here and there. They've been handled swiftly with good conversation. And I believe, and Greg can probably confirm this, solutions that were agreeable to both the town and American. So kudos to you guys for that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a great relationship so far.
I just want one question to follow up on the falls. How would you categorize most of them?
Having looked through all of the calls myself, it would be hard to say. So I can't say whether it's a trip and fall or slip and fall, but usually that's what it would be. If you'd like, I could follow up with that with some more specifics after a review of the calls to give you some more detail as to the age of the patients and whether it was, a slip and fall, a trip getting into the tub, that kind of thing. Break it down a little bit more detail for you if you'd like.
I think that if Steve and the mayor are talking about working on that, that would be good to see. Steve,
Sure.
you unmuted yourself. Did you have something to say there?
I was just going to say, I think that one thing we could look at is a fall with an injury, i.e. they were transported versus a fall without an injury. I should be able to look through some of the calls and sort some of that data, and especially the system that American has is excellent with that. So that would be certainly one way to look at it and find out how many of these calls result in an injury or a transport and or a hospitalization versus, we go out, pick them up, put them back in their chair, and they continue on their way.
Yes, the number that I did report on, the 102, those were actual transports. So I did not report on anything that was that did not end in a transport. So if we want, I could actually show you the numbers that we did respond to that didn't end up in a transport as well. That number probably would be higher. And then again, I can break down those details for you, whether they were a trip and fall or some other type of fall from a ladder or something along those lines.
Thank you.
You're
Anyone
welcome.
else? Well, thank you very much for being here. It
Very welcome.
It is amazing that it has been 2 years, and it's all good news. Well, it's never good news, but it's good news as far as your response time, etc. So thank you for being here. You're welcome to say, but you're also welcome to turn us off, so to speak. So.
All right, very good. Well, thank you for having me, and I'll have a great night, and I'll follow through with everything that I promised I would with the fall data. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yep, bye now.
Bye-bye. At this time, are there any residents and property owners who wish to speak? No one? Committee or commission or board reports? Let's see, the only commission I see here is Mr. Woody. Mike, you had your hand up?
If Nate wants to go first, I'll go after Nate. So difference, I got 2.
Oh, did you have anything, Mr. Woody?
No, no comments. Yeah, just a reminder that we do have a meeting tomorrow night where we'll be taking comments on the ag regs, but no comments beyond that.
Thank you.
I I have two. One is for the inland wet. I have a commission liaison report for the inland wet.
Oh,
Oh.
Mr.
Sorry.
The liaison reports will be at a different time in the agenda.
Correct. Sorry.
No, that's all right.
For the community relations report, we met.
Mr. Washington, that'll also be at another point in the agenda.
You have been a good day for me.
You're just so anxious. I'll give you a signal.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is the Board of Assessment Appeals, is this appropriate time to make a comment?
Yes, it would be. Thank you.
Since the chairman's not here, I thought I would express my appreciation and the board's appreciation for finding a new permanent member and a new alternate member. Jennifer Lineweaver was exceptionally talented, and we're very, very fortunate to have her. So whoever found her gets an A+ in our book. So I just wanted to make that statement. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other boards or commissions? Mrs. McGrattan. You're muted.
Sorry. I see Nate Woody here. I thought he would have been at administration. And we had a prospective commission member talking about input to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And I told her that I thought you were going to wait until the commission was appointed and get some input for them before you made any decisions on the amendments to agriculture in the plan of development. Is that correct?
I don't want to speak for Mr. Woody, but they're a long ways away from making decisions. Is that correct, Mr. Woody?
Yeah, so I can speak briefly to that. So in order to make any regulations, to approve any regulations, we would have to have an application and a public hearing, none of which has happened. So we're still purely in a public workshop period, which is just gathering information and comment. And we will do that at our meeting tomorrow, but we're a long ways off from being in a place where we make a decision.
Okay, so the ag members can be assured that you will wait once they get established to hear from them.
Absolutely, and I think that's one of the things that I pointed out in the statement that I made was, we're not going to move forward with anything since we have gotten the Ag Commission that we've wanted for a while. We're not going to move forward until they get seated and we figure out the best way to work with them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. At this time, are there any comments of town councilors, please? If you would raise your hand. Town councilors, anyone? Okay, I have, let's see, I think one thing. Mr. Treaster mentioned about finding new members for the Board of Tax Review, Tax Assessment Board of Review, and about how we found members. I have to say, I'm very pleasantly surprised. We're able to find, I think it was 16 applicants for the Agricultural Committee. And we recently had we've had a opening on the Board of Education for a while, and suddenly we came up with 4 or 5. I'm not sure if it's 5, it could be 4 applicants for that commission. So it's very wonderful to see all of the folks coming forward to volunteer, because certainly the town depends on volunteers to run. So thank you for everyone that did come forward. Okay, if there is no other comments, I will move to review and approval of prior meeting minutes, and if we could do those together, that would be great.
I make the motion to approve both meeting minutes.
Is there a second? Please.
Second, Councilor Malone.
Okay, motion's made and seconded. Any corrections, additions? Roxanne, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Sebelia,
Yes.
Mr. Soms,
Yes.
Mr. Washington,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Yes.
Mr. Malone,
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan. Hold on. Mrs. McGrattan.
Yes, yes.
In favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Communications, you have communications list for September 9th. Let's see, referrals, I referred the Board of Education Administrators contracts to the Finance Committee, and I also referred to the Finance Committee a request from the Housing Authority. I think you received both of those, didn't you, Mr. Soms?
Yes, we did.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. Council Subcommittee Liaison Reports. Admin?
Ordinance on alcoholic beverages is on the agenda, and the other part of our meeting just went to making recommendations for appointments to the Agricultural Commission.
Any questions for admin? Hearing none. Moving on to finance. Mr. Soms?
Finance, yep, thank you. This is Councilor Psalms. Finance met, held its regular meeting last Wednesday, September 2nd, and we discussed proposing a tax exemption for buildings and/or equipment used in farming. We reviewed 4 existing local town ordinances along with the enabling Connecticut state statutes, and Mayor Allen came to the meeting with a list of the town's potential liability, tax liability, if an exemption on buildings were used, if the ordinance were to pass. And we learned that if all of the existing farms that would qualify in town, if they had sales, and I'll get to the sales, but the town's existing tax liability for existing buildings would be only $11,000, $11,600 in tax loss. And if all those farms were to build more buildings so that they could receive the maximum exemption, which is $100,000 by building more buildings, our total liability will only be $28,000. And given that, we talked about and asked the mayor to see if he could get the same data for existing ag machinery for review by the commission. The way the ordinance works, it's a state ordinance, and the town's funded. It's not funded and it's not reimbursed by the state, but a farmer can get up to $100,000 in exemptions on buildings. They can get another $100,000 in exemptions on machinery and equipment if we pass this ordinance. And to make sure that the ordinance is not abused, property owners have to show either farm revenue of $15,000 in agricultural sales or $15,000 in expenses. So you really have to be a farm. The challenge is to receive this exemption this year, they have to file by November 1st. So we also talked about what we could do to move this along quickly. We have approximately 3 town council meetings to move this along and get it approved if we decide we want to do that. But we're waiting on the ag machinery tax liability, and once we do that, we'll be able to have a better picture of what it will cost the town. And again, we could do buildings, we could do machinery, and we could do both. We also commented that land use for farming is existing land used for farming preserves Ledyard's heritage in agriculture. It adds to local quality of life because people like to see farms. And not only that, they like to go to farms and buy stuff. It actually provides us with more diversity in our food sources. So when there are national emergencies, sometimes a good idea to have a local source of food. And also, while farmland is not open space, if it doesn't remain in agricultural use, it can either later be preserved as open space because it's fields usually, or it can be converted to residential housing. And I'm sure that Councilor Dombrowski will have more on this. That's, everything else we discussed is on the agenda tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for finance? Hearing none. Land use?
So yeah, land use met last night. The special meeting, since our normally scheduled meeting would have held on the Labor Day holiday. We moved forward on the ZBA ordinance to add the fee schedule. So we should be seeing that coming onto our agenda to schedule the public hearing early October. We also started, as Bill had alluded to, we started looking at the farm ordinance last night ourselves. A couple of questions came up. One of the things that Bill talked about was, changes that could come pending further evaluation from the mayor's office on including farm equipment into that ordinance. In order to meet the timeline that finance is trying to meet so that the farmers can apply for this year, we made the suggestion that the land use admin and finance have a special meeting next week when we get all that information, so we can go through the ordinance and pass that through committee at our next meeting next Wednesday. Bill, is that correct? Special finance meeting, special land use, and a special admin meeting. I think 6 o'clock
That's
next
correct.
Wednesday. In order for us, so we can go through all this, and each of the committees can get through that ordinance next week to get that onto the council agenda. That's really all I have to report, unless anybody has any questions.
Linda, are you there?
I'm going to text her. It sounds like we lost her.
Got
Yeah,
it.
we
Okay,
can-
sorry about that.
Oh,
I'm
you're
good.
right. Yeah, okay. Good.
Mr. Dombrowski, the last time you gave a report, probably 2 meetings ago, we talked about the Tri-Town Trail. What is the status as far as permitting? I know there was a question about that, and I checked my notes today, and I have a list of outstanding items, and that happened to be one of them.
Yeah, and so discussion at our meeting last night between the Tri-Town Trail Committee and the Director of Planning, there's still some issue of what is the real status of the permitting process. Tri-Town Trail Committee had reported that they do have a wetlands permit. But there's some disagreement going on between the Tri-Town Trail Committee and the planning office that we need to kind of come through. Hopefully here soon. Unfortunately, I've been meaning to schedule this, the Tri-Town Trail. Karen Parkinson has been asking me for this for a couple of months to have an open workshop session so we can kind of iron through a lot of this stuff. But because of things going on at home and work, I just have not had the time to schedule that. And I'm hoping to get that scheduled here in the next couple of weeks so we can have a workshop session so we can kind of iron through the details of what the next steps for the Tri-Town Trail Committee to move forward.
Very good, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Dombrowski? Moving on, Community Relations Committee, nudge, nudge, Mr. Washington.
It helps when I read the whole agenda. The community, the subcommittee met last Wednesday. Couple things, and not in any particular order, is we had the opportunity. The mayor was there and provided some information and discussion relative to house service, some social services, some issues that took place with the tribe. And I'm not sure if Fred's going to talk about that at all today. It wasn't from last meeting at the town council. Just for some clarity from some issues that came up. The other thing was we continued our work on the mission statement. We kind of got to more of a finalized statement. The plan is at the next meeting, which is on September 16th, is the plan to finalize that at that point. And we also are looking to schedule our first workshop starting on the 7th of October and the 8th of October. And we'll kind of, the days are kind of set, just the topic is kind of going to be policing, and we're going to have some additional discussion on the 16th on exactly what we're going to be talking about. And the purpose of the workshop is to really get the general public available. The town residents come in and give input, and the other part of it is going to be education. So we're going to kind of finalize that up at the next committee meeting. And that's the report for the community relations. Any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Washington?
No, that was quick.
There you go. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any liaison reports? Mr. Washington, yes.
I just happened to. The Inland Wetland Commission met Tuesday, the first Tuesday of the month, and back on September 1st. And one of the things they did was a review of the inland wetland fees, inland wetland watercourse fees. And I guess they're in the position right now, they've got one more meeting to look over their fees. At that point, they're going to provide those. We'll go through the process. I know it's gone through the admin and not admin, finance committee, and it's going to come back to the it'll come back through to, bear with me 1 second. Nope, bottom line is they're going to go back and revisit their fees at the next meeting, kind of cement them down and then forward them off to admin and for final resolution.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Washington? Other liaison reports? Anyone? Nothing, Bill? Okay, I'm just going to read on Mrs. Ingles' report from the Board of Education. Just says, we have two people we have Mr. Hartling and we have Mr. Bronner. So you can just let me know if this all sounds good. The first week went on without any major issues. Staff and students did well addressing the hybrid schedule, and students did well wearing masks the days they were in school. Last week was focused on educating students on the new operating procedures and getting technology needs addressed. This week they are moving into teacher to student teaching. Next board meeting on 9/16. Jay and his team will provide the board with an update on the operating model and any issues that may have come up. They will review the most up-to-date information from the Ledyard Health District in the state's Department of Health, and a special meeting of the board will be scheduled at the end of the month so they can make a decision on the operating model after 10/1. The motion to reopen using the hybrid models was for the first month, with the goal of opening full-time in person on 10/1, providing that the data and information supported this approach. And then she said, if you have any questions about the Board of Ed report, please contact Chairman Favory. But we have Mr. Hartling and Mr. Bronner here. If anybody has any questions, this would probably be a really good time to ask. Anyone about school opening? Wow. Okay. So let's see. Any other liaison reports? I'll move on to the mayor's report. Whoops. No, mayor.
Yes, I'm here. Good evening, everybody. So to the school point, superintendent and I did attend the first day of school, 2 separate days on September 1st and September 3rd. Obviously, vastly different this year than normal, and I think it was a testament to the Board of Ed with how they have arranged and configured the various entrances. So it wasn't the usual where you see all the kids flooding by you as we stand at the front doors, because they're all entering different doors based on their cohort. So well done to the Board of Ed and the superintendent. Hopefully things continue on a really good path at all of our schools. To the schools, our Ledyard Center School officially just signed their 9th tenant in the building. So there's some work to be done in terms of getting it ready for all these 9 tenants. But I think I'd mentioned a photographer. There is a real estate office, an insurance office, a bakery and cafe, the package store, the daycare center, and there is also a tutoring center that is going to be going in. So great start with that. Hopefully the momentum will keep up with Ledyard Center School, but it's taking shape. Census is still going well. We're at 78.8% response rate. We're still right there with Waterford in terms of Eastern Connecticut response rates. My goal was 85% for this year. In 2010, our total response rate was 74%. So we're already exceeding that, but we need to do better because it's about $30,000 per person that is not counted. That is for federal funding levels over the course of the 10 years between one census and the next. So we want to make sure our residents get counted. Holiday programs, it sounds bizarre, but we're starting that already. And the reason is that we are changing the program pretty dramatically, at least for this year, hopefully just for this year. So the normal, we would be collecting donations of turkeys, hams, all sorts of various food items for the holiday dinners, as well as actual gifts for the children. And because it is a crowded atmosphere that's not conducive to our COVID situation, we are instead looking for gift cards for both grocery stores and for gifts. And so we're doing a little bit early so that hopefully the parents could buy the gifts with the gift cards in advance for the holidays. So I'll keep you posted on how we're doing on that. We've had some very, very generous families in the past that have always made our program shine, and hopefully that will continue. I had a conference call with the Department of Public Health and the Council of Government, and Department of Public Health is advising that senior centers remain closed until at least January of 2021. So I know there are a number of seniors that are not excited about that. They're not happy about that. But at the same time, that is a age demographic that has the highest risk for the COVID virus. And then speaking once more about the COVID virus, we're at 42 cases in Ledyard. We've had no additional deaths. There are 6 hospitalizations in the Ledyard Health District, or in New London County, I should say. Probably the less positive news is that Ledyard last week had more cases than the previous 3 weeks combined. So it did spike up. It spiked up from 5 to 18 cases in the Ledyard Health District, which is a 10-town district. We just completed in town a townwide asset inventory. This is a totally new system for us, which is a barcode system with an aluminum sticker that is a very durable sticker that goes on all the town assets. The in-the-field work has been completed by the contractor, and now they are starting to itemize each one of these items. So we could go up to a pickup truck or a backhoe or whatever we have, we could scan the barcode on it, and we will know exactly what that machine is, when we got it, when it went in service, when it's due to go out of service, and what the capital asset value is. So looking forward to seeing that system go online for us. Police attrition, it's high right now. We've got 5 officers, 2 left law enforcement, 1 is moving away, and 2 are retiring by December 31st. So I think what we're seeing is I think we're seeing a bit of the fallout from the police accountability bill. And it's not just affecting bad police, as some may have said. I think it's actually affecting good ones too. We have now had posted for more than a month, and we've left it open looking for certified police officers, and we've had a total of 3 applicants. So we're leaving it open for a bit longer, and we're most likely going to end up trying to put 2 in the academy, and we're going to put that out in October just to see what kind of response we get. And we don't know. The last time we had 55 applicants. I can't imagine it's going to look like that this time, but we got to get some people in there because we will be at a staffing level of 18. So we'll keep an eye on that. Really positive news, the Holdridge Pavilion, the Public Works Buildings and Grounds guys have been continually working on the town green as time permits with them. And the Holdridge Pavilion is now relit inside. So the old lighting that was actually designed for interiors of buildings, not wet environments, and the wiring also was not intended to be in a pavilion, but inside the walls of a dry building. We have since replaced all of that, and it now has ultra efficient LED panel lighting in there. So that should be really good. And maybe some of our committees and commissions can make use of that for some open air meetings in the near future. And then lastly, we have Council of Governments, our REPT annual meeting tomorrow. That is the Regional Emergency Planning Team. What we basically do is we have about a $400,000 federal grant that we are allowed to spend on an annual basis, and these are for regional assets. So we've created a shopping list for that federal grant spend. We've got about $390,000 of items to purchase through that grant, which includes things like electronic message boards, towable generators, towable light towers, and election day barricades for all the towns, because that's something that's a requirement this year. So we have to have barricades that will buffer people standing in lines, because if people are standing in lines, they're going to have to be outside this year instead of queuing up in a hallway of a school or whatnot. So we're going to get that shopping list approved tomorrow. And then, like I said, any of those regional assets are available to us. So the generators, the message boards, the tower lighting, and we've got a ton of stuff that's available. It's generally in Norwich, but if the town has a need, we can put out a request, and the town, if another town has that asset, they will actually deliver it to us. So just keep that in mind when we have storms or other things. There may be assets that are available that we don't have to own, and we can borrow from the planning team. And that is all I have for tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. Any questions for the mayor?
Mary, I have a question. Mayor? Okay.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Eric Treaster came to our administration committee meeting tonight asking us about the short-term rental ordinance. None of us present knew anything or have heard anything about it since it was instituted last fall. He has heard some negative comments from people who live in the Long Pond area. Have you had any complaints from anybody on this particular ordinance?
The only complaint that I was copied on to the zoning office was a singular complaint for Long Pond specifically, which essentially is the source of where the complaints had come in the past. So there is one outstanding complaint for Long Pond. We know who the property owners are. They own several cottages out there. So it's something that I believe is being addressed, but I will confirm that with the zoning enforcement officer and report at the next meeting.
Thank you.
You're
Also,
welcome.
Conservation met for the last 2 months under the lights at the Holdridge Pavilion. And we noticed last night all the fixtures up. So they were kind of, it's going to be too late for this year, but they were looking forward to using it next year.
I don't know. I think you could don a winter parka and get out there and use it still.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions for the mayor? Mr. Soms.
Yeah, Mayor, I just wanted to confirm what I think I heard you say regarding the census. For every census not returned, the town loses $30,000 over a period of 10 years in federal funding. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's about 2,000. I think it's the actual number is $2,990 per year. But since the count is every 10 years, you figure it's $29,990 over that 10-year term until the next census count. So, and that's federal funding. That includes, that's anything from federal funding for roads, bridges. It's also schools, education, and it's actually our congressional districts too. So inaccurate counts will affect our congressional district boundaries.
So if I'm, just to put that in perspective, that's $3,000 per year. So if an average homeowner pays $5,000 or $6,000 or even $7,000 on their property tax, that's an additional $3,000 we could have for that resident. Correct?
Absolutely. And one of the examples that was used when the census, the regional census person came out to town hall was that if we have, let's say we have a student who is 7 years old, and that student is not counted in the census, the next time they get counted, they'll be 17 years old. So they might be a senior in high school, but they might also graduate, and they could in fact go through essentially all of our schooling without ever seeing any federal funding by way of census count. So it's critically important to get the count as best we can. Like I said, 74% was what we had in 2010. We're doing better than that now, but we still need to do better than where we are right now.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yep, it is.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Actually, the second thing is a comment regarding police. When we're down 5 officers, 2 things happen. 1, our overtime budget goes through the roof. And 2, and I think worse, the pressure on those officers who are getting the overtime but doing the work is incredible because they're all overworked, and that causes more job stress and potentially more turnover in the ranks. So this is a rapidly escalating problem. You know, first we had 1, then we had 3, now we have 5. It's not a good situation. So I'm concerned, and I'm sorry that this is happening to them, frankly.
Yeah, I am too. And the part that's probably most troubling is 3 out of the 4 that we put through the academy are leaving the law enforcement career completely. So we paid to put them through the academy for 1, but 2, these were our young up and comers. These were the people that we kind of needed to bring some youth back to the department, and we're losing 3 of them, retaining just 1 at this point. So it is troubling, and it's something that I think I'm going to be sending a letter to our legislators on, because I think this may be one of the effects that police accountability law is starting to impose on us.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the mayor or comments? Hearing none. There is no old business. Would anybody like to amend the agenda under new business? Hearing none. Admin?
I make a motion to adopt proposed amendments to ordinance number 300-029, formerly number 34, an ordinance regarding control of alcoholic beverages at Town of Ledyard facilities as contained in the draft dated February 3rd and then updated to August the 26th. This has been to a public hearing, and we have made a few non-substantive changes. We've corrected the Parks and Rec property addresses and deleted the amount of the fine in section 7. And it just says, in accordance with Connecticut general statutes, a person may be fined, but we left the amount off. And that's all. Otherwise, it's the same as it was at the public hearing.
Are there any questions or comments from councilors? I'll just say
We need a
nobody.
sec-
Go ahead.
We need a second.
Second by Councilor Washington.
Second. Thank you, Roxanne. I would just say no one can accuse us of moving fast on this one. This has been kicking around for a long time. So
Since February 2nd.
of this year?
Yes, it was supposed to go to a public hearing on March something, and we had the virus and I put it off.
Okay. Thank you
Well-
for your, thank you for your work on this. Kevin, you had something?
Well, just a clarification is the admin got it on February 2nd. It went through land use prior to that. We had it for since I think October of last year.
Okay, I knew that didn't seem long enough. Thank you. Any questions? Thank you for your work. Roxanne, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Soms,
Yes.
Mr. Washington,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Yes.
Mr. Malone,
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan,
Yes.
Mr. Sebelia.
Yes.
7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries, and now we have 2 routine tax refunds. Mr. Soms.
So I move to recommend the council approve one tax refund in the amount of $7,888.54 that exceeds the $2,400 in accordance with the tax collector departmental procedures.
Councilor Malone.
So thank you. This refund, as we've talked about many times before, is in excess of what the mayor's authority is to approve. So it comes to the council. This was a clerical error on a cell tower property owned by Mr. Atkinson or the estate. So this is a refund due to a clerical error.
Any questions? Roxanne, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Washington,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Yes.
Mr. Malone, Mrs. McGrattan,
Yes.
Mr. Sebelia,
Yes.
Mr. Soms.
Yes.
7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Next item.
I move to recommend the town council approve one tax refund in the amount of $5,813.66 that exceeds the $2,400 in accordance with tax collector departmental procedures.
Second by Councilor Malone.
Thank you. This is adjustment on the American Styrenics property, also in excess of the $2,400 signing authority by the mayor. I should also comment, just as an interest point, that at the finance meeting, we talked to the mayor about adding a little more narrative to these documents so that when we look at them, we can understand what actually happened. The only real explanation is if you happen to be looking at the application, you'll see some coding where it says do not write below this box. There are text and codes, and the only explanation is adjustment to property owner. We asked for a little more narrative as well as a printed signature from the applicant as well as from the tax collector, because if you happen to be looking at it, I can't read either one of these signatures. So, 20 years from now, if somebody's looking at this, you'd have to do some research to figure out who applied and who signed. So the mayor has agreed to take that back to the tax collector.
Okay. Any questions? Roxanne, would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Yes.
Mr. Malone,
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan,
Yes.
Mr. Sebelia,
Yes.
Mr. Soms,
Yes.
Mr. Washington.
Yes.
7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Next item is not an action item, but is a discussion item regarding the Ledyard Administrators Association contract with the Board of Education. And I will say there is good news and there is bad news. And the good news is the contract looks like a very good one. If Mr. Harding or Mr. Bronner would like to comment at this time, I would certainly entertain that. We will not be taking a vote on this. If 30 days goes by and we have not voted, it is automatically approved. It is my intention to let the 30 days go by unless someone wants to put it on the council agenda. The vote is typically, we vote no to reject it. This is the one time that the motion is a no vote to approve the contract. So it's always a little funky and we always have to explain it, but it's my intention to let the clock run out on this, and I'll explain that in a bit. But if Mr. Harding or Mr. Bronner would like to speak, I see Mr. Bronner's microphone is open. So why don't you go for it, Mike?
You bet. Thank you. So Mike Bronner here from Board of Ed. So the administrator's contract, we received notification that it was time to begin planning these negotiations. We actually met with the administrators and came up with this contract change. We were able to do this in a very timely manner and very efficient manner, which was a good thing. It's a 3-year period of performance as stated in the agenda package. This would take effect July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2024. The key things in this contract are the health insurance. Again, like the other contracts now, are the state partnership plan. We already had that in an MOU. It's actually rolled into the formal contract. The health insurance premium cost shares are 19.5 for the first year, increased to 20% in the second year, and 20.5 in the third year. We fixed some issues related to scale for new hires so that the contract again reflected the way we were doing business. And the key event here was the pay increases are 1.75% per year, which is actually less overall than the previous contract and keeps us, our goal is to try to stay under 2%. It was a very cooperative discussion. This way here, the contract got settled and we did not have to go through long legal battles and expenses. As most may be aware, this happened while we were also dealing with several other contracts and focusing on getting school open. So we did not, and this fall, me here as the chair for the negotiations committee, we did not issue the normal notification that we're supposed to issue to town council, letting you know we were beginning these discussions. It happened quickly and cleanly, and it was an oversight on my part. So we do apologize for that, but we were able to get this done timely with very good numbers. So we were happy with that, so we could focus on getting the schools open and getting the kids back in, even on this hybrid approach that we're taking now. And I will gladly take any questions that may be that the council may have.
Thank you, Mike. Mr. Soms.
Thank you, Mr. Bronner. Just a question. You mentioned that the employee share of health care insurance would be starting at 19.5 in the first year, and the document we're looking at says that they start at 20% and end up at 21%. Could you clarify?
I may have my out-of-date sheet in front of me. Mr. Harling, do I have the is this sheet we have the out-of-date? Because we did have an update.
I'll have to look and see what's posted on the council agenda.
Yeah, our package that we reviewed based on my slide here was the 19.5, 20, and 20.5. But we'll take that action, Mr. Soms, to verify the correct amount and notify town council.
Okay, thank you.
The contract that's on the council's agenda was the one we received in the one that was filed at town hall, is what I understand. Is that correct, Roxanne?
That's what the cover letter said, yes.
Okay. Are there, we'll get that clarified. Any other questions? Hearing none? Okay, so as some of you know, and Mr. Washington, this is new to you, by state statute, the Board of Education is supposed to give us notice 30 days prior to entering negotiations. That was not done. In the past, Mr. Soms has represented us on the, not on the negotiations committee, but he was represented us as a, what was the word I want to use, Mr. Soms?
A person present, an observer.
An observer, that's the word I was looking for. So we did not have that opportunity. The good news is it's a good contract, I believe. I was certainly pleased when I saw it. The bad news is several years ago, it was not a good contract. We were not notified. We almost ended up in court. It was the ugliest situation. We were in the newspaper every other day. So when I see this happen, it freaks me out, quite honestly, because it was so really a bad scene. And those of you that have been involved will attest to that, I believe. So we want to try to avoid that. And I understand it was under unusual circumstances. I was reminded by a former Board of Education chairman that there is no penalty for them not notifying us. So what? And I hope that someday that that I can get a legislator's ear to put something in the statute to do a do-over if we're not notified, because it seems kind of silly to have a statute where there is no penalty, because there is no incentive to notify us at all. So with that being said, it's my intention of letting the clock run out unless somebody, and I'll certainly honor anybody that wants to put that on the agenda for a future meeting. In the meantime, I am referring it to the Finance Committee. And so, Mr. Soms, you will then get to take a look at that, and you will maybe get clarification on the difference between the two numbers.
Yeah, I just looked at it while we were talking here, and it's 19.5, 20, and 20.5. It's on page 8 of the contract itself. So the cover letter is wrong.
Okay. Okay. So that's
or the contract's wrong, but I assume the contract's right. So
contract would be correct.
Okay, so that's good news. Roxanne, did you have something to add? You had your hand up.
I was only going to mention what Councilor Soms just mentioned, that, you know, the cover letter was different from page 8, section 5 or section 3.
Okay, well that's actually good news,
Yes.
I guess. So we have a little bit of good news. So, any other comments before we adjourn? Actually, no comments. Kevin, I'll let you make the motion.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Motion's made and seconded. Somebody?
Second.
Mr. Soms.
Councilor Soms.
Motion's made and seconded. This meeting is adjourned without exception. Thank you. Thanks all.
Thanks, everyone.